Welcome everyone to the first in our series of spring training for Blackboard. It's odd, I think, for us to be doing spring training right in the middle of the big blizzard that hit Plainview and knocked us out of commission for a couple of days, but we're happy to continue on with this. We've got a great presentation here for you today. Dr. Trish Trifolo, our distance learning specialist who is in charge of faculty support for the virtual campus, will be leading our sessions. And over the course of the next several weeks, she's going to be walking us through some specific features of our Blackboard system, particular tools that you can use in your classroom to help improve and build community. And she'll talk a lot about that here in just a moment. We look forward to you being able to participate in upcoming sessions. All you got to do is we'll send an email link every week, and just click on that link and you can log in like you've done today. By the way, I'm Dr. Scott Franklin, the director of the virtual campus here at Wayland, and it's a privilege to be able to work and serve with each of you who teach for us here on campus. A couple of notes in terms of administrative issues in terms of the webinar. You'll notice once you've logged in that there's a chat window at the bottom left. If you have questions as Trish is going through her presentation, feel free to type those questions into the box down there. I've got a few of our staff on the virtual campus helping to monitor that chat room, and you'll be able to get some answers there. And if we don't know the answers, then we'll kind of keep tabs on those, and then at the end, whenever Trish has wrapped up her presentation, if there's any questions that haven't been answered yet, we'll go back and have her go through and touch on some of those. So again, thank you all for being part of this. We will be recording this session, so if you'd like to watch it again afterwards, we're going to post the link both on our Learning Resources blog, also on our webpage. I'll send that link out to everyone. And also, if you have any colleagues that have expressed interest, make sure they know they'll be able to find a recording of this session online, and we'll post that as soon as we can get it all put together, probably within the next day or two. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Trish. I'm looking forward to what you have to present for us today.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I wanted to start out this session with something that most people are familiar with. They may have used it, or used it sparingly, or used it quite a bit. And some of the new features in Blackboard in this past term has been rubrics. And so I want to link a new component with something a little bit more familiar, and also present it in the terms of online learning communities. That's something that I'm pretty big on, that is very important in the online world, because when you're working with your students, you have to establish a community. When you go into a face-to-face classroom, they get to see you, they see how you dress, they listen to your speech pattern, they have your facial expressions, and they can start to identify with you. You might talk about something about your family or an experience that you've had. And in the online world, we tend to get so caught up with content and getting material to the students, we forget that this is about learning, and learning is best done in a community. And so we want to establish community in our classrooms. And there are lots of different ways to do that. One of the first ways we ask you to is to put in your instructor information so that they know how to contact you. We ask for a welcome message and kind of direct the students to the way to start your course. And many of you use the discussion board as a place for introductions. And that's a really good way to establish a community. The students get to know one another, they identify with something someone said, and they get used to talking to one another and having introductions. So before I go much further, is anybody having a hard time hearing me? There are 4 little buttons over here. There's emoticons. You can click one of those sometimes. You can raise your hand if you have a question. And also an easy way to respond yes or no is with a check mark, which goes right in front of, or right after your name, I guess. So is anyone having difficulty hearing at this point? Okay, so it looks like we're all right at this point. So let's go ahead and get into discussion boards and rubrics. Now, a discussion board is basically a place to discuss things. So one of the very first questions you have to ask is, do you want to discuss or not discuss? If you want your class to be more interactive, this is kind of a familiar thing. So do you have the kind of subject matter that lends itself to discussion? I would venture to say that some of the stuff that Scott teaches in math, if you're just working on the actual process of doing an equation, some kind of equation, there's probably not too much to discuss. But in life sciences, I have lots of things that I can put out there. And so I have a pretty good subject matter that lends itself to discussion. And you have to look at your content and find things that you know, perhaps in a face-to-face class, you know has led to a really vigorous interaction with the students. Also, how do you envision this discussion would enrich your classroom? Why do you want to discuss? What is the point? What objective are you trying to attain? Or are you trying to build some more knowledge? I adopt a constructivist kind of theory. It's a learning theory that says basically you have students that are able to research. They have all sorts of different experiences because our students are coming from very new 18, 19-year-olds all the way up through 50 and 60-year-olds. And they have lots of experiences and ideas and ways, points of view of seeing things that are very different. And they can bring things to my life science classroom, perspectives and ideas, or maybe the newest kind of research that I haven't had a chance to read yet. They can bring that to my classroom through the discussion board and let me experience that and let others kind of build on that knowledge. So the idea in a discussion board is if you can bring in some very good questions, you can create a much bigger knowledge, something bigger than just you can bring to a classroom, expanding that information for the students. One of the things is how much time do you want to contribute to a discussion board? A lot of new faculty think that they have to get in there and respond to everyone all the time in a discussion. And that's not true. In your face-to-face classroom, you let the discussion flow. You don't jump in every time somebody says, oh, I have this and this opinion. You don't say, oh, that's really great. I'm glad you've researched that. I think that's really interesting. Where did you have that experience? You don't do that. You let the conversation flow. And you need to do that same thing in your discussion boards. You want to have a presence. They should know that you're there. So you might make a comment. You might offer some direction to focus the discussion in a certain direction. But for the most part, let them go for a certain amount of time on their own, seeing if they can build or bring in some different points of view. I don't know if Keith Pratt got in with us today. He is very big in the online world. He has several books out, and he's one of Wayland's own professors. And one of his textbooks is, give him a little plug here, Building Online Communities. And he has lots of really good ideas in that, and he talks very much about building a presence, building a community. And one of the best experiences I've had with instructors in discussion boards on the receiving end as a student was a graduate professor who just came in. We knew she was in there because we'd see her post just every once in a while, but at the end of the week, she came through with a summary paragraph of what we were discussing, and she said, Trish Trifolo said such and such, and Jimmy Jones said such and such, and Sue Shackmuth said this and this and this. And I can tell you, I was waiting every week to see if I contributed something important enough to get my name mentioned. And as a result, we had very dynamic discussions. And so those are things that you want to think about. Do you have questions that will stimulate discussion? Can you be in there enough to direct it? Can you sit back and let them run with it a little bit? And what are you going to do with the information that they put forward? How are you going to use it in your classroom? Feel free to interrupt with questions too. I want to have this as a little bit more of a give and take. So as you get started in saying, okay, I want to get started with discussion boards, there are a few pointers. Number one, the better organized the course, the easier it is to navigate and use the technology. If students are trying to click left and right and find some information in some little nook in the course, they're going to get frustrated and they're less likely to participate. So the easier it is to use the course and navigate around, the better it is to the more participation you'll get. So the fewer the clicks, statistically shown in research, the more likely the students will complete a task well. So once you've got your course set up and you've got your content and you've decided you want a discussion board, what are some of the best practices leading to discussion? You want to have clear directions on what the students should be accomplishing. You want to have them answer 3 questions and give an example of where that question was relevant. You want them to read a concept in the textbook and give some kind of personal experience with that concept or apply it to a real-world situation. But whatever it is, make sure there are clear directions. How much should they talk? Is there a length that you want that response to be? Is there a number of references that you want them to use? Is there a certain time frame? Do they have to have it posted by a certain day? Make sure all of those instructions are very clear and the expectations as to the time and the amount of the discussion is clear. Do they need to respond to other classmates? Sometimes they need to be cajoled a little bit into doing that. And also giving an example of what a good discussion response is helpful, especially with students new to the online world or freshman, sophomore students coming into a discussion. And I'll show you what I do in one of my classes, in my life science class, in my discussion board, to give them an idea of what works. Now, remember that you don't want to overwork yourself. So maintain a presence, but don't get in there and spend hours and hours and hours responding. Make the topics interesting and worthwhile. And you know how it is. Nothing's worse than being told to write about something and you spend a little bit of time researching it and you compose something very, very perfectly that you think is a really good contribution, and then it's never referred to or it's never used in the classroom or it has no real purpose into what you're studying. So don't make busy work for the students. Try to find something that's very relevant to the concept you're getting across, to the objective you're trying to reach. And stress application in real-world experiences, because that's what we're really trying to get to. We want a deeper understanding of a subject. We want them to be able to analyze and construct and apply and use it in their real-world experiences. Now, one of the best ways to delineate responses and give them ideas on how to respond is a rubric, and that's something new. And so I'm going to show you a rubric that I use, and how to work with rubrics. All right, so let me take you to the discussion board. All right. Hopefully you are now in my Apple Pie course. My Apple Pie course is just a course that I've set up so that I can use it for demonstrations. You'll see it in some PDFs and videos that will be coming out, and I can go ahead and create lots of information and things in this course to demonstrate. Okay, so I have an Apple Pie course, and I have a discussion board over here. And in my discussion board, I have created several different forums. And one of them is what makes a crust superior. And we're going to come back and use that one in a minute. If you've never created a discussion forum, when you open up the discussion board tool, and that is defaulted into your menu because so many people use discussion boards. But if for some reason or other it's not in your menu, you can go down into Course Tools here and find the discussion board. You can add it to the menu by looking for a tool link, because the discussion board is a tool. And all of these different things are tools in Blackboard, so you can select that and name it whatever you want. You don't have to call it discussion board. If you have something imaginative to use and the students know that's what it is, that's fine. Make sure you have it available to users and then submit. And when you submit, it won't let me submit right now because I haven't put a name up here. But when I would submit it, it would be here in the menu. So I'm going to click into my discussion board, and I'd like to start out by creating a forum. And this is where you have to have all of your decisions made already. So on this one, I could call it how to find the best filling. All right, for a pie. And in this place, I would put in all of my directions. So I'd be putting in instructions. I'd like you to go to a website and find the different types of apples that make the best pies. I want you to describe their characteristics and why they make good pies. And then tell me which you think is your favorite and where you would, what kind of dessert you'd make with that and serve it to what group. I'd make up whatever I wanted to in this particular case. And I'd put my directions in here. You can always link into websites by linking it to a hyperlink to a URL. You highlight it and hyperlink it. You can use this like a regular text box and put in various formatted text. And of course you can bring in images and pictures and files and different things like that. Once you have the name and the directions, make sure the forum is available, because if it's not available, the students won't be able to click into it. If you only want it to be displayed at a certain time, click yes, and then specifically set the date and time so that it comes up whenever you want it to come up. If you don't want the students in there ahead of time, some students like to work ahead. I don't like my students to work ahead. I want them to work with me in the current concept, and so I don't open my forums until I'm working in the forum. The most important components of the discussion board is the forum settings, because this makes the tool work easily and properly for the students. Anonymous posts. Anonymous posts are anonymous to everyone. If you allow anonymous posts, you as the instructor will not know who posted that. Now, when would you use a tool like this? In life sciences, we discuss evolution. And some students are very comfortable discussing evolution, and some are not comfortable discussing evolution. And there are some very strong opinions on one direction or the other. And so if I wanted a very open discussion on evolution, then I could go ahead and make it an anonymous posting, and people could go ahead and voice their opinion and their contributions without fear of someone identifying them with that particular stand. And so you could do that. I very rarely use anonymous posts, but you may be able to think of some ideas that will work in your classroom. You can allow the author to delete the posts. I usually only do it if no one's replied into a particular discussion, and then delete everything. You want a record of that discussion about whether I do this kind of response. Most of the time, I make them leave the post, but I do allow them to edit it. So if going in and correcting it. If you do not check mark either of these two boxes for them. Allowing post tagging. This is something that you could do kind of like you bookmark something. You can flag or tag a post that you or the students find very helpful. I let my students do this sometimes if we're providing resources. If we're studying atoms, go out and find a really good video or website that has helped you understand bonding and energy transfers. And as they post those in the discussion board area, they can post the ones that they like of the ones that their friends have put in. You can also rate posts down here, another way of doing that. Allowing users to reply with a quote just allows a student making a reply to take a section of a parent post and put it into their post. This particular comment in Johnny's post was very, very relevant because, and they would have the quote from Johnny's post that they could build on. I find that one becomes more useful in a graduate course than in an undergraduate course. File attachments. File attachments are usually fine. In the early days, students would transfer files, music files, video files, different things between themselves in my classroom, so I didn't allow file attachments. Now that's pretty easy to do in the real world, and so they don't have to do that. So file attachments are if you want them to bring in papers or references, different things into their discussion. All right, threads. If you have a forum and you create a thread and you do not want the students to come up with any new ideas, you just want them to stay focused on this particular idea, then don't allow them to create a new thread. The only thing they would do is respond or reply to the previous postings. And it would be all one long thread that just keeps growing longer and longer and longer on the same topic. If you would like your discussion to be more tree-like, where you provide a trunk or foundation and you allow your students to go off in different directions that are relevant to the topic but slightly different appearances or points of view, then allow them to create new threads so that they can create a new idea or a new introduction of a concept. Subscriptions. Subscriptions are what you do like with an RSS feed. If you like to go to NPR and you want to subscribe to one of their programs, you can do that. And every time there's a new program, it shows up in your email as a new component of that program. And you can click on it and you get to hear what that program says. In subscriptions, the students can subscribe to a forum or they can subscribe to a particular thread, and it sends them an email notice, or it may end up in their email box so that they know that there's activity in the discussion going on. This is really relevant in courses where you have a lot of adults who are working quite a bit and they would like to remain current in their discussion, but they don't want to have to come into the classroom to see if someone's responded to them. So if they can subscribe to a thread, they can watch their email and say, oh, someone's responded to me, now I'll go into the classroom and reply back because I need to continue this discussion. And so it saves them a little bit of time. I don't find my undergraduates utilize this as much as graduate students do. But if you have a fairly older population of students, active duty military, a big population of them, you may find it very good tool for them to use. Rating posts, again, how many stars do you want to give this post? I find that, now remember Blackboard is relevant for K through 12 also. So they use this quite a bit, but I would suspect in maybe a speech class or a video production class or something where you would have to put up a PowerPoint and get critiqued, this could be a very useful tool. Beware of forced moderations. This is a very good tool, but it comes with some caveats. When you force a moderation, a student will submit a post and they will not see it in the discussion board. So they post it and there's nothing there. Very scary for them, especially if they're trying to meet a time frame for posting. In forced moderation, the instructor or a discussion leader or a student worker or someone who's working in your course, a TA, they would read the post, see if it's relevant or appropriate, and then release it. And so this is a good tool in certain circumstances, but the students have to know that it is being moderated and that what they post won't be released right away until the moderator gets to it. Then you also have to make sure the moderator is watching these in a timely fashion. Some classes use this when they don't want students copying off each other's posts all the time. You know, I found in my graduate course when I was taking it, I tended to be one of the first posters. You know, I'd read my reading and I'd try to compose a really good response that was needed. And I know that there were other students that were maybe busy and they'd read through my post and they'd try to find something relevant and they'd take a little piece of it and maybe expand on it. I didn't mind that, but my instructor did not like that. They wanted original thinking. And so moderating a post may be very good if you want original thoughts and you don't want students copying or getting ideas from each other before the discussion is underway. All right, that was quite a bit of material. Do I have any questions up to this point on the settings? And if you have a microphone, feel free to click the little talk button and you can bring forth questions. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and get into the grading. Grading in a discussion board is optional. If you do not grade a forum, then the students can post. There will be no column created in the grade center. and you can just read it and build all the knowledge that you want and use it in whatever way that you would like to. Most people grade their discussion forums if only for participation grades, if not for a particular content. So if you want to grade a discussion forum, you're going to click into Grade Discussion Forum, and you'll need to put in the number of points that you want. Now, in my discussion forums, I use a 12-point scale. And my 12-point scale is set up in a rubric. So I can put my 12 points in here, but if I associate with the rubric, then it will put the points in for me. So I have a couple of different rubrics that I've created. One is an example one, and one is a discussion rubric. That's the one that I currently use for my discussions. So you can have a simple discussion rubric. We'll look at the example here. So I'm going to select that rubric that I've already made and submit it. And it's going to change the points. You'll notice I had put 12 in, and this is a 10-point one. And here is some information. It's the name of the rubric. It's going to be used for grading. This is the last date that I edited this. And under this area, I have 3 choices. I can show the rubric to the students. I can show them the rubric without scores, or I can show it with scores. And that's what I would like to do because I want to show you the full function of this. Now the rubric looks like this. And you're going to have to tell me, Scott, if this shows up in the window or not.
Yeah, we see it.
Does the rubric show up? Or is
Yes.
it show up? Do you see it? All right, good. I wasn't sure if it would follow. All right, so in the rubric, you can have certain criteria that you want to look at, and then levels of achievement go over here. So I can assign points for certain accomplishments. Now this rubric really doesn't tell the student very much. It's just strictly a point kind of rubric. So I'm going to choose a different rubric. I'm going to use my discussion rubric, and I'm going to delete the example one and add rubric with scores. So we can look at it in a minute from both our standpoint and the student's perspective. In this rubric, it's much more detailed. And I lost it. Let's take a look at it here. All right. In this case, I have 4 different criteria and levels of achievement, and I named them the way I want to. I have a non-performance where they didn't put anything in, a basic where they've responded, but they really haven't done very much in the way of explaining the concept or furthering the discussion. They really didn't talk to their fellow classmates. They maybe didn't give me an experience, and they didn't have any references. I expect a proficient post, one that explains the concepts and maybe applies it. They talk to their fellow students about it. They give me an example of how it might be used or applied in the world, and they give me some references where I can go back and either get more information or go to it to find out, to clarify something. And my students would be distinguished if they extend that much more. They analyze the concept and talk about what's good and bad or where it came from. They relate the discussion to the different things that the students have said, and they ask questions about it. They talk about real-world experiences with several students, or maybe give several examples, and then they bring in a very adequate amount of references. So I have different ways to add up these 12 points in a discussion. If you didn't have a rubric already made, you can create a rubric, and this is what you'll be doing if you haven't done rubrics yet. And it's quite simple. Takes a little bit of time, but it's relatively simple. You're going to create the rubric. You have to give it a name. You do not have to put a description. You'll notice that there's no star, red star by the description. This is strictly for you, so you do not need to do that. And now you have lots of options. You can put in percentages. You don't have to do points. You can just be commenting. You can do points. You can do a point range from 1 to 3 points, from 2 to 4 points. Or you can put a percentage or a percentage range. You can name these levels of achievement any way you want. You just go in and change the name. And then save it, and it will change it for you. Beginner, average, oops. And proficient, I like that one. And then the criteria really depends on what you are looking at. So in this case, they're giving you some ideas, maybe formatting, organization, and grammar. You can also reorder these if you want to put them in a different order. You can bring the grammar up to the top and it'll move it there. Or just like in the other, you can change the name. Or if you only need 2 rows, you can delete a row. If you want to add a row, you just add a row. If you need another column, you add a column. So it's very simple to build. The hard part is deciding what criteria you want to put in and how you're going to describe to the students how they will meet each of those standards that you've set. So once you've got the rubric set, don't worry about alignments at this time. If you are in education, you may, or nursing, you may have particular alignments, but at this point, I don't know anyone who really uses these, so I'm not going to spend any time on them. So I'm going to use the discussion participation rubric. It should have changed it to 12 points. It's a 12-point scale. I want to use it for grading, so now it's going to update my points. That was where it was changed. And I'm going to submit. And when I submit, wanted to make sure I had everything listed there, it will be added to the bottom of the discussion forum right here. If you mouse over the name, you can always go back and edit any of the things that you need to edit. When the students come in, they'll click into the forum and they'll go ahead and create their threads. Now, what do they see? Let me log out and come in as my student. So now I'm a student coming into Apple Pie, and I want to do a discussion forum. And I'm going to go into what makes a superior crust forum. When they come in, they see the tab for creating a thread, which they're familiar with. But what they may not be familiar with is this grading information. If you have a rubric, you will have grading information. If they click on that, over here, they can go ahead and see the rubric. Now, I've made a post already, but I would have not had a post. It would have just had this rubric here. And I can go ahead and view the rubric, and now I can see, oh, I'm only going to get certain percentages or points on this particular rubric that I'm using based on what I'm doing. And so the student has a standard now, can say, oh, I've got to make sure I put in a lot of experiences, and I need to make sure I talk to people so many times to be able to get the full points. So they can view the rubric, and now they know what you want as an instructor. On the instructor's perspective, this is really cool, because if you use a rubric, it makes grading really easy. So I'm going to go into the discussion board. Now you can enter the discussion board this way, go to the forum, and grade the forum. And it will list all of the people who are in my class. It will tell me whether they've made posts. And we see Dr. Franklin has not made his post yet. And I can choose to grade the post as I need to, based on the particular rubric. So I just had my test student make a post, so I'm going to click on grade. So here's the post that Trish Trifolo test student made. Here are other people who have made posts, and there's a green exclamation point that says I have not graded it yet. If I show all, I can see all of the students, even those who have not made posts. I can find out some statistics about the post, and these are characters rather than sentences or words for the length. And if I'm ready to grade the forum, I'm going to edit the grade. And when I go to use the rubric, I want to click on the rubric. And now I can look at this person's post, and the only thing I have to do is click into these radio buttons, and it's going to calculate the score for me. So if I would read through here, it looks like the person is pretty proficient in their concepts. They didn't converse with anyone else at this point, so that's a non-performance. But they do have some real-world experiences in there. And they put in a website and a reference. So I'm going to give them a distinguished mark on that one. Oops, a proficient mark on that one and a distinguished mark on their references. So this person has a raw score of 5.83 out of 10. And that's what their score is. Now, Blackboard gives you the option of adding or changing. If there was something that was an above the board type of thing, or maybe it was a late post and so you're going to knock a couple of points off, you can change that in this box. So you can add or subtract points. In the feedback area, this is what the student will see, and you can make a comment in the feedback area. But this is a pretty little box, and you may want to expand your comment. You can do that. Just click on Text Editor. And you'll get the rubric and a much bigger box with all of the appropriate icons to go ahead and give the comments that you want to do. Then you save what you've done. When you save what you've done, it says, okay, here's the score. Here's the feedback. Should have comment in there someplace. And if everything is right, here is grading notes. These are for me. I can put in notes here. The student post was late. Student doesn't see that comment. I do. So if she comes back to me and says, well, why did I only get 5.83? I see what I did on the rubric, but you knocked a point off. Let's say I did that. Or if I want to go back in here, I can actually do that. I'm going to give them 4.83. And so the student was late. They're only getting 4.83 even though they scored 5.83. Once I've reviewed that, I must save the grade. So the trick here is there are two places that I have to click once I put in a grade. I go to Leslie. I edit the grade. I open the rubric. I score my rubric. I put in any feedback. I submit. But I have to review my work to make sure I've got things the way that I want it, and then I save the grade. If I go into the full grade center, this is a superior crust, I've got to find my discussion there and what makes a superior crust. I see Leslie had a 6.67, and I can view the grade details, and it will show me what her points were, and I can go ahead and see what kind of feedback I gave to her if I want to. And I have what the test student did. And I can go back and view everything, or I can add an additional comment. So we're having an easy way to grade the grade center now, especially if you have a rubric. You have ways that you can build this to make it a useful tool. You can use it in lots of different ways. At the beginning of this, I talked about a presence or establishing a community. It's really good to have some kind of interaction with your students on that first week of class. You might ask them to post something about themselves. You might ask them to talk about what they want to get out of the course. What their expectations are, something to establish their presence and make sure you establish your presence and they know a little bit about you. So the discussion board can be used in different ways, advancing knowledge, establishing presence, but either way, it's a really good tool to use. So I guess I'll open it up to any questions.
There was one question. I think we tackled it a little bit in the chat window, but I thought I'd go ahead and let you have comment on it. You showed how to use the rubric to grade. How is it different if they elect to grade but don't use the rubric tool?
Okay. If you don't use a rubric tool, it's just a matter of, now let's see, let me get someplace where I don't have a rubric listed. I think I have a rubric in that one. I don't think I have a rubric here. Let's say I was grading this particular forum. If I go back, I'm going to edit this forum so we can grade it and not have a rubric associated with it. So in through here, I'm going to grade the forum. I'm going to give it 10 points, but I'm not going to put a rubric in there. and I'll submit it. In this case, it's strictly when you go to grade it, you're just going to be putting in comments. So it all works the same way. You just don't have a template to work with. You edit the grade and you give feedback. You give them how many ever points you think they should have, and you can give them feedback or not. If you want to get the text editor so that you can do something more extensive, you can get that same thing. You've got the more extensive text editor. And then you submit this, and the changes are saved, and it goes right into the grade book that way. So you don't have the second click because you don't have a form that you want to double check. You've just put your comments in. So you can see my feedback says wonderful. I've given her 10 out of 10 points, and in the Grade Center that's what it would look like.
All right, Dr. Ash also had a question that he just posted in the chat window. Will the use of a rubric avoid the off to the races syndrome where students each week become spring-loaded to respond and in essence rewards, the discussion board rewards the first participants more than the thoughtful ones? And do you have any techniques to help with that problem?
Yeah, sometimes in the discussion boards, depending how you frame your questions or have a broad enough topic or asking opinions, if there's kind of a finite answer or a limited answer, you get the spring-loaded ones, the ones who want to be the first ones to post because they know that if they get in there and they post their ideas and everything, then they're going to get full credit and there's not going to be any question about it. If you give a broader type of discussion question, for example, in my life science class, we could talk about the value of vaccinations. What is good or bad about vaccines or vaccinations? I expand that a little bit and ask them to research a vaccination that people are given, anything that's good or bad about it, and then post their opinion about whether vaccinations should be given or some of the different things that we've talked about. So there's a broader possibility of posting several different things. Not everybody is going to post the smallpox vaccine information. I could also limit it in saying if you see someone with that topic, you can't post on that topic. You have to choose a different thread for that topic. But the rubrics do help a lot. I think it helps some of the struggling students figure out how to give an answer. Let me go to my life science course. I didn't show you an example of something that I put into my discussion boards. In my life science class, I put in a sample discussion board response. And this is my 12-point scale, and if they come in and they just say, wow, no way, and start giving me text messages, they're not going to get any points or they're not going to catch my attention. If they come in, yes, we read in class about the sun being the center of the galaxy. Okay, they've been paying attention. They've got the concept, and they know how to answer along that line. But I want them to further the discussion. And so if somebody posts first and you want to come along later and get full points, then you need to further the discussion in some way. So they need to add something different or new. So they could say, yes, I also read that it takes longer, the light's longer in the southern hemisphere during the winter time. And so and here's an experience that they can talk about, sun coming in their window early in the summer. And then, as long as we've got websites or references and a little bit more knowledge, the rubric, I think, does help stop the students from just trying to give the same answers over and over again, because if they really want to further the discussion, they have to build on what's already been posted. And the rubric helps them kind of be aware of that.
Could you also take just a second to do a quick demonstration of what it looks like for a student to post an attachment? Dr. Callahan asked if you could show that. Yes.
Yes. In the discussion board? Okay. Getting to apple pie here. Hopefully I've got file attachments listed on here. Okay, what makes a superior crust? I think it has file attachments. So I'm going to create a thread. And the student can do this two different ways. They can type in their response here and then attach a file. And when they attach the file here, it will go to their computer. They can go to their computer and their documents. Let me find one someplace here. And they can submit it, and it will be in the box. Or they can come down here, and if they just need to attach a file, they wouldn't have to write anything in the box. They could do the same thing but browse their computer from that location. And double click, and it will be there. They have the option to make sure they've got the right document, and if they think it's wrong, they can remove it, and then they submit. And once they've submitted in the thread, here's my response, and when they open it up, they'll see that there is an attachment. And so people can look for it and open it.
Excellent. Thank you. There was one other question. Catherine Boyer asked whether or not you can incorporate more than one rubric, one for the original thread and one for the reply.
I'm not completely sure that you can. Let me get into apple pie here. Let me go into this one. Actually, I wanted to edit that, sorry. I know that you saw that you could attach a second rubric. So if I select a rubric and put in this one for the first one, and it's used for grading, the second rubric is used for secondary evaluation. So let's see what that looks like. So this is the form with the types of flower. So if I come in here for the types of flower and I grade the forum, I have two. Let's see. So if I grade this one, because it's my student, I'm giving myself all distinguished grades. And I would suspect let's see what this does. Okay, so it's saying use this one as the grading one. So it won't, because it only has one place in the grade center to put one score for a particular thing. So what you could do is open up a second column for the reply score and just transfer that to that column. But I'll kind of fool with it, Kathy, and see what we get. See if we can come up with something for those two.
Are there any other questions that we can answer? I don't think we missed any in the chat room, but if you have any more, feel free to jump in here before we wrap things up. Always insightful, Dr. Boren. All right, I think we've managed to do it. Thank you so much, Trish, for your time and presentation. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
Nope, that's it. If there's something that people would like to have a webinar on, email me ideas or particular concerns, because we can incorporate these and build on them. And I just kind of pick on what I see out as questions in the community, but there's things that I maybe don't know about or don't realize is a concern. So let me know.
And as always, Dr. Tripolo is standing by to help you if you run into any trouble, you need any ideas. She is our primary point person for all things in terms of faculty support. I'm standing by to help as well, but she's our expert, and she's anxious to provide any feedback or any assistance that you might need. So thank you again for participating, and like I said, we're going to post this video both on our website and on our blog, and we'll email a link out to it so that you can watch it again if you missed anything, or we'll be able to distribute it to our colleagues who weren't able to attend but would like to learn more about the discussion board and the rubric tool. Thank you guys so much.